First, I'm going to talk about the books I actually finished in July, and first up is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It's book number 1 in the Red Rising series. I've listened to the original trilogy, the first 3 books, but Pierce Brown has expanded on that, and the last book, number 7, is supposed to come out sometime next year, and so I want to re-listen to the first 3 books, plus the next 3, before that one comes out. I really enjoyed this book a lot. I think I liked it more this time than I did last time. I took it a little bit more slowly, and I guess I just did a better job of actually paying attention. I particularly liked the beginning, like the first quarter, first third or so, when Darrow is still in the Red Colony. Just this rustic, like folksy type of environment that he's in, and his love for his wife. I usually don't really enjoy romance very much, but it is just really nice to read that. Like, it feels like a true loving family situation that he's in, including the fights that he gets in with his uncle. Like, they love each other, but they're always arguing. Like, I just really love that part of the book. By the way, if I look really sweaty, it's because I am. It's super hot. My home office is in what used to be the garage. Whoever owned this house before us converted the garage into like another bedroom, and I use it as an office. And the AC doesn't really work here much at all. And it's not insulated well, so it's really hot in the summer, and it's really cold in the winter. So anyway, sorry if I'm all shiny. Next up, I read Necromancer by Gordon R. Dickson. This is number 2, sorry, there's a glare. This is number 2 in the Child Cycle series, or number 1 if you're going by internal chronology. It was the second one published, but it actually takes place earlier than any of the other stories. This one was kind of difficult to enjoy, if I'm being honest. It was hard to tell like what exactly was happening and why things were happening and why it was important. There's a lot of weird philosophy. Basically, this guy, he loses his arm, and it's set in the future where there's a lot of medical advances, and supposedly he should be able to get a new arm, like regrown or grafted on, but it's not working. He's tried it like 3 or 4 times. No one's able to get it on, and so he finds this weird like cult called the Chantry Guild, and they claim to basically, like, they don't say it like this, but basically help people like mind over matter type things. Like, you can overcome anything. You can transcend your physical existence if you harness these. They call them the alternate powers. It was just kind of weird. But I have to talk about, there was this moment where they're testing him to see if he's like worthy to be in the guild. And they put him in this chamber, this sealed rock chamber, and they tell him you have to guard, I can't remember what it was, a book or something. You have to guard this thing. It's on an altar, and a dragon is going to come and attack, and you have to protect this altar. And he knows it's all in his head. Like, he knows nothing physical is going to happen, but he knows that he's going to be completely convinced that it is happening. And that was kind of cool. And he talks about how fear is going to like be his worst enemy. And it made me think of Dune. I've only seen the first Dune movie, but I've heard the quote, "Fear is the mind killer." And it just made me think of that. And all of a sudden, it started making me like this book more, because I felt like, oh, was this maybe a little bit of an influence on Dune? Because this came out about 3 years before Dune, and main character's name is Paul. Isn't that crazy? So anyway, I ended up liking it by the end. But yeah, it's just a lot of weird stuff and weird philosophy. So after Necromancer, which was book 2 in that series, I read the 3rd entry in that series, which is Soldier Ask Not. And I read it in this book. It's kind of hard to read. I don't like this font on the cover. It's the Hugo Winners, volumes 1 and 2, in one big collection, one omnibus thing. Soldier Ask Not is in volume 2, and it's a short. I don't know if it's a short story or a novella, and it's somewhere in between. Maybe it's a novelette, I guess. It was later expanded into a full novel, but I just read the shorter version, and I liked it way more than Dorsai, way more than Necromancer. It's written in the first person, so I think it made it a little bit more accessible. Oftentimes, first person doesn't work that well, but here it was like really refreshing, to be honest. The other ones were third person, and they just felt very detached and very dry and kind of boring. And this one, you're just right in the middle of it. It's about this guy, Tam Olin. As a young man, he's working as a journalist, and he's covering this conflict between the friendlies and the exotics, whose names I hate. Like, having a planet, a culture, a society called the friendlies, the friendly culture, I hate that. Because, like, you're reading and it says, like, oh, he's a friendly. And it takes you a second to realize, oh, that's talking about, like, his nationality, not that he's a friendly person. I don't know. I didn't like that at all. It's really good. he's a journalist. He's supposed to be impartial, but he allows himself to kind of get wrapped up and involved in things that he shouldn't be getting involved in. This takes place during some events that are covered in the Dorsai book. So if you're going to read this series, I would read Dorsai first, and then Soldier Ask Not after that. And Soldier Ask Not, I guess I should mention, is the entire reason that I started the Dorsai or the Child Cycle series, because it won the Hugo. Obviously, that's why it's in this collection. It won the Hugo in '65, I think. And so I am going through and reading like the Hugo winners, not only the novels, but also the shorter fiction as well. And so that's why I read Dorsai and Necromancer in order to understand what was going on in this one. Although, I think you could just read Soldier Ask Not without reading anything else in the series, and you would get a pretty firm understanding. Although, having read Dorsai first, it would enhance that understanding a little bit more. Okay, I've been talking about this a little too long. Moving on. I finished listening to that audiobook from a friend of mine called I Saw You Looking at Her, The Eye of the Beholder. I talked about this a little bit in the June wrap-up. I guess maybe I misspoke in the June wrap-up. I had not finished it by the end of June. I finished it early July. And my friend kind of asked me not to share too much about it. That's why I'm not telling you his name. But it is an unpublished first draft, or maybe second draft, of this nonfiction book that he wrote. It's basically like for couples who, you know, if your husband is having trouble, he's looking at other women, or your wife is having trouble, she's eyeing other men in public. It's kind of like practical advice on how to handle that and relationship advice. It's Christian-centered, but it's very much research-based and science-based, and I really like that about it. It's well-written, particularly for a first book, for someone who's not an established author or anything. I don't think he's ever like studied writing that I know of. It's actually very well written considering that. So if he ends up getting it published, which I think he wants to do, I will definitely let you guys know here on the channel, and you can check it out. Another thing that I kind of missaid in the June wrap-up video, I mentioned going on a trip to Lubbock. That actually happened in July, sorry. So in June, I took a work trip to San Antonio, and I took the whole family with me, and that's when we listened to some audiobooks. We listened to, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that was the one. And then in July, that's when we took a trip to Lubbock, or the Lubbock area. It was a little town called Plainview, not too far outside of Lubbock. And it was a work trip for me, but we took the family along because it's summertime. And on that trip, on the way there, we listened to almost all of How to Train Your Dragon, which is the first book in the How to Train Your Dragon series by Cressida Cowell. And man, we really liked it. We really liked it a lot. It's like a 4-hour audiobook, and we listened to 3.5 hours on the way there. And then the next day, when after they dropped me off where I was working, the kids finished it without me. So I had to, later on, I actually was interested enough to listen to the rest of the book on my own. It's a lot of fun. It's very different than the movie, actually. In the book, the dragons talk, but only Hiccup can understand their language because he studied it. So that was kind of interesting. Book Toothless is wildly different than movie Toothless. I liked it. The kids liked it. It's a lot of fun. There's like a giant dragon that they fight at the end. It's really goofy. I like the characters' names. They have a lot of like Snotlout is one of the kids' names. They have all these like gross kind of silly names. We will almost certainly listen to the next book, How to Be a Pirate, on our next road trip, which is going to be at the end of August. So I'll let you know at the end of August how that goes. Now, on our way back from the Lubbock area, we ended up listening to 3 more Junie B. Jones books. My daughters really love Junie B. Jones. We listened to Junie B. First Grader at Last. We listened to Junie B. First Grader Boss of Lunch. And Junie B. First Grader Toothless Wonder. So she graduates kindergarten, moves on to first grade. She has to get glasses, which was really timely for us. One of my daughters recently had to get glasses, and another one actually has an eye doctor appointment tomorrow that she might have to get glasses. And so they have not been too happy about that. Listening to that book, I think, was good. Those were a lot of fun. Junie B. Is not a good role model. She's very, not to sound weird or whatever, but she's very like disrespectful to adults. She's very disruptive to her class. But she's fun to read about. You know, we always tell our kids, hey, you know what Junie B is doing right here is like not good, right? Like you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. But it's funny to listen to Junie B. Jones do that, right? So anyway, those were some kid books that we listened to this month. Oh, but there's another one actually. Also on the way home, we listened to 3 hours of a book called Dogtown by Catherine Applegate and Jennifer Choldenko. We actually didn't quite finish it. It's like 3.5 hours long, I think, the whole audiobook. We arrived home at about the 3 hour mark, and I was not interested in finishing it. It was fine. It was okay. My wife liked it. She ended up finishing it the next day. She said she enjoyed it. It's about, it's kind of weird. It's like robot dogs and real dogs in a pound together in an animal shelter. And, like, it's narrated by a live dog, but the story is more about this robot dog that's trying to get back to his family. It was kind of goofy, but a pretty good book. I felt like it was sort of overly sentimental, and like I said, I just wasn't all that interested in finishing it. I also read a short story called Icarus Montgolfier Wright by Mr. Ray Bradbury. Honestly, typically I don't really enjoy this kind of dreamlike prose that Bradbury uses a lot, but here, I don't know, something about it just really worked for me. I made a YouTube short about this story. It's about a guy who's about to take a rocket to the moon. He's going to be the first person... No, a rocket to Mars. Crap. No, rocket to the moon. He's going to be the first person to ever do that. And he's dreaming, sort of half awake, half asleep, and he's thinking about Icarus from Greek mythology. He's thinking about the Montgolfier brothers who created the first like manned air balloons, hot air balloons. And he's also thinking about the Wright brothers who created the modern airplane. And it just works. It's like, it's interesting how he kind of builds, right? From Icarus to the balloon to the plane to the rocket. So it was a cool story. It's very short, so check it out. We're not done talking about kids' books yet. We got Captain Underpants and the Terrifying Return of Tippy Tinkle Trousers. This is book number 9 in the Captain Underpants series. I read this to my kids, and it's just, I adore Captain Underpants, you guys. Captain Underpants is absolutely amazing. If you haven't read it, I remember in 2nd grade, it was at a book fair. I saw Captain Underpants, and my mom was nice enough to buy me a few of the first books in the series. I ate them up. I really liked them, and ever since then, I've been a huge fan. My kids really like Captain Underpants. This one has to do with like some time travel, and George and Harold, the main kids, they like prank some bullies, and there's of course lots of potty humor, and it's just a good time. So it's number 9 out of 12. Fantastic series, fantastic book. Check it out. The next thing I read was The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Just the short story, not the whole book, not the whole collection. Actually, I don't think it is a short story. I think it's more of a novella. It's kind of on the long side, but really good. I love the transformation, the character development of the main guy, Henry Sugar, and how his attitude really changes. I don't want to give away too much, but it is really a feel-good story. I would recommend you check it out. This whole collection is pretty good. It's 7 stories, and that was the last one that I had left to read in this collection, and now I have read the whole thing, and I would recommend it to just about anybody. They're not really kids stories like what Dahl is really known for, but they're not exactly adult stories either. He has a few that are definitely only adult stories. These are not that. These are totally accessible to anyone. The last couple of things I finished this month were both by Mark Twain, and they're short story. Well, I don't know if they count as short stories, but short writings from this book, Mark Twain on the Damned Human Race. Really interesting, fun book. I read The Caravan and At Galilee, and they are in the section on the United States. So him talking about Americans and the U.S. and stuff, which is kind of interesting because both of these are about him joining a group of tourists visiting the Holy Land. So it talks about them like traveling in a caravan and how they're dressed so like goofy, and how he was embarrassed to be involved with these people who were dressed all weird. And then the story At Galilee, I really enjoyed it a lot. It's about they're at the Sea of Galilee, and they wave down, and I can just imagine, these like not very well-traveled American people who maybe don't understand much about the culture that they're visiting, and they're like screaming on the shore, trying to wave down a boat, yelling, trying to get this boatman's attention. He comes to the shore, and they're like, please, we'll pay you to take us around the sea. We want to spend all day out on your boat. Take us to where the pigs jumped into the ocean. Take us up to Capernaum. Take us across to Bethsaida. Take us to all these biblical sites, right? And they're like, we'll pay any price. We're desperate, please. And he tells them, okay, I'll charge you 2 Napoleons, which I did the math. He says in the story that's worth $8. I did the math. This takes place in 1867. That would be about $170 today. So for $170, he'll take them all over the place. They can hire him and his boat for the whole day. And they had said, we'll pay any price. We're desperate. And as soon as he says that, they're like, 2 Napoleons. We'll pay you 1. How about 1? And then the guy just jumps in his boat and takes off. And no matter how much they beg to come back, they say, okay, we'll pay you what you asked. He won't come back. And I just completely spoiled the whole story. But it's a short one, and it was just good. I really liked it. He has such a sarcastic way of writing that really lampoons whoever is the subject of his stories. I really enjoyed it. Now on to several books that are still in progress. I have not finished any of these quite yet. First up, we've got Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. I read chapters 64 through 66, and I know that's not very much, but I'm trying to make progress. It's a little bit hard for me, to be honest, to get motivated to read Sanderson these days for whatever reason. I think it's because of the chapter recap videos. I made 3 or 4 chapter recap videos this month about these chapters, and I don't know, I guess just dissecting the book little by little makes it less enjoyable. And I've already read this one, I think, at least 3 times. This will be my 4th time. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. Hopefully I'll read a little bit more next month, but it is what it is. I also read a couple chapters of How Did It Begin? I talked about this in the June wrap-up video. I read chapters 22 and 23. Talked about the origins of money and counting and accounting. Talked about the origins of paper and ink, piggy banks, the origins of the terms blackmail, blue moon, and fortnight, and just some kind of fun stuff like that. Another one that I mentioned in June is the Book of Mormon. We read the Book of Mormon together as a family every morning, and typically like half a chapter or maybe a full chapter, depends on our schedule or whatever, how long the chapter is. But this month we read Alma 17 through 36, and this covers a lot of like Ammon preaching to King Lamoni and the Lamanites, Aaron teaching King Lamoni's father, and Alma and Amulek traveling all over the place, preaching to the Zoramites, preaching in Gideon and Ammonihah and all this stuff. There's some really like major kind of classic chapters of the Book of Mormon here, really powerful doctrine and great stuff. Together with the Book of Mormon, I've been reading, I forgot I owned this, and in the middle of the month, I saw it on my bookshelf. I said, oh man, I should be reading that along with the Book of Mormon. It's Doctrinal Commentary on the Book of Mormon. It's a 4-volume set, 4-volume series, but I only have the last 2, volumes 3 and 4. So this one is Alma through Helaman. And since we're reading Alma, at the beginning of the year, I told myself, oh, when we get to Alma, I'll start reading this. And I forgot. So I'm kind of playing catch up a little bit. I'm trying to catch up to where the family is reading. But it's really good. There's some really good quotes in here. And I'm enjoying it quite a bit. All right, back to some fun, like fantasy stuff. I mentioned this again in June. This is Shadows of Self by Brandon Sanderson. I've been reading this with my lovely wife. I have read this before on my own, but I've been reading all of Mistborn to her. We read the first trilogy last year. We read Alloy of Law after that, and then we started this one in October of last year. Kind of never made it very far, and then restarted it in May. We are currently 85% of the way through the book. Didn't read very much this month, but we are making some progress. My wife really likes the character of Wayne. She thinks his humor is great. I'm not such a huge fan. I do like him, but just not as much as she does. She also really likes another character who's from the first trilogy, who's also here. I don't want to spoil anything, but she wishes he would show up a little bit more. They're fun. These are the Wax and Wayne books, Mistborn Era 2, are good, but they don't really compare to first Mistborn, in my opinion. And yeah. Another religious one, Screwtape Letters. Still reading this on Sundays. I read a couple of chapters this month, or letters this month. Talking about like the nature of gluttony, talking about sex and love and marriage. And this is I just love this book. I love the way C.S. Lewis understands things and the way he explains things. I also started another audiobook called The Nightland by William Hope Hodgson. Matt over on the YouTube channel Bookpilled speaks highly of it, so I went and looked for it. It is kind of older, so it's in the public domain. You can find it to listen to for free on the LibriVox app, and that's where I'm listening to it. I've really been enjoying it quite a bit. It has a very old-style language. It was actually published in 1912, I believe, but it's intentionally written as if it's in the 1700s. The story is like this guy from the 1700s has a sort of weird vision about the future, and it's literally like billions of years in the future when the sun has died out, and they live in the Nightland where there's not very much light. The only light comes from like thermal volcanic action stuff happening, and they live inside what they call the Last Redoubt or the Great Redoubt, and it's this giant fortress pyramid because everywhere out in the darkness there are these demon monster things that will kill humans on sight, and it's just really like crazy. Very inventive, very creative. It's super dry and repetitive, but somehow still entertaining. So I'm about 58% of the way through it. It's kind of longer. I have about 8 hours left to go, and I'm enjoying the ride. All right, the last book in this What Did I Read section. I have not been this excited to start a new book in a long time. I can't really think of the last time that I was this excited to start a book. I mentioned I've been reading through the Hugo winners. I'm also reading through the Nebula winners, or I'm about to start, because the Hugo Award started before the Nebula Award, so I started the Hugo Awards, and now that I've gotten to 1965, that's when the Nebula Award started, so now I'm going to start reading them both together. And the very first novel that won the Nebula Award is Dune. Ooh, I am psyched to be reading this. It actually won the Hugo Award the very next year, so I'm kind of reading it for both. I saw the first Dune movie. The second movie just came out earlier this year. I have not seen it yet. I don't mean to be like jumping on the bandwagon. This has been on my list for years, and I started reading the Hugo winners like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's something that's been in the works for a long time. I'm just finally getting around to it. It's not as slow or dry as I thought it was going to be. I had been led to believe that it was like really inaccessible and difficult to understand, but I'm getting it. I think I'm getting it. Like occasionally there's a few weird things that I'm like, oh, I don't really quite understand. I don't quite follow that, but mostly it's very clear, very cohesive. I like it a lot. It's very well written. The world feels real. I haven't read something with this good of world building in quite a while. Takes place on the planet Arrakis mostly, and it's just awesome. The only thing I don't really like so far is the epigraphs at the beginning of each chapter. I feel like they spoil a lot. I just read the part where they encounter their first sandworm, and that was really cool. I'm intrigued by this Liet character, personage, concept. I don't know what it is, but the Fremen keep talking about Liet, and it's some sort of secret, so very cool. I'm about 200, I'm on page 225 at the moment, which is actually exactly 25% of the way through the book. So yeah, I'll probably finish it in August, because I am going through it fairly quickly, and yeah, I'm loving it. So what will I read next month? Well, I'm just going to continue with all the stuff that I'm reading. I'm going to continue Words of Radiance, Shadows of Self, How Did It Begin, the Book of Mormon, Doctrinal Commentary, the Screwtape Letters, the Nightland, and Dune. And honestly, I'll probably read a few short stories sprinkled in there somewhere, but I don't think I'm going to be starting any new novels. If I do, I'll either jump straight into the Dune sequel, Dune Messiah, or if I need a little break from the Dune Chronicles, from the Duneverse, I'll probably read Tactics of Mistake, which is number 4 in the child cycle that I mentioned earlier. Oh, I'm probably also going to read Wayside School with my kids. We're going to take a break from Captain Underpants and read Wayside School Beneath the Cloud of Doom, which is number 4 in that series. I've already read the first 3 to them earlier, and we just recently got a hold of this 4th book. I didn't even know it existed until I found it at a used bookstore place a few months ago, and so I'm probably going to read that one. Wayside School Beneath the Cloud of Doom, just reading it to the kids. But other than that, that's all my reading plans for August. Alright, to end this video out, let's talk about some things that have happened on the channel. I have uploaded in July 4 Stormlight Archive chapter recap videos, which I'm happy about. I should do more, but you know, I got a lot of other things going on. So 4 is a good number for me. I'm going to try to keep up with that. Probably 4 or 5 a month going forward. I hope. We'll see. I hate to make promises because I always end up breaking them. I'm sorry. I uploaded a Stephen King video. It was a book review on the short story collection Skeleton Crew. I'm really happy with that. I think it's a pretty decent video. Check it out if you're interested in Stephen King or if you're interested in short stories. I do not spoil the stories, so check it out. I uploaded 2 shorts, which I mentioned earlier. My very first short ever about that Ray Bradbury story. I don't think it's fantastic, but it's okay, I guess. The second short that I did, The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar by Roald Dahl, I think is much better, but still not like amazing or anything. But I do want to make more shorts. I plan on making more shorts. It's a fun thing to do about the short stories that I read. In the month of July, I also uploaded my very first monthly wrap-up, so that was kind of fun, and this is my second ever monthly wrap-up. So subscribe if you're interested in following along with these books that I've been reading and hauling and unhauling and things like that. Currently, last time I checked, I think we're at like 325 subscribers, so that's kind of cool. I know that's tiny in the grand scheme of things, but to me that feels huge. Just a few months ago, we were at like 200, and so the channel is starting to grow a little bit faster. Last time I checked, we're sitting at 325 subscribers, which I know in the grand scheme of things is tiny, but to me that feels huge. Like, it's amazing to me that over 300 people are interested in watching videos that I make. So that's really, really cool, and I appreciate that. As far as plans for the channel, the big one that's hanging over my head, I need to make a review for the Expanse series. I did a post here on the channel on the community tab not too long ago, I think it was at the beginning of June, asking if you guys were interested in seeing that, and one person said yes, and I still haven't made that. I told them it would be ready by the end of that week, and that was almost 2 months ago, so I'm sorry. I also need to get back into doing music because this channel is called Emo Songs and Read-Alongs, so I'll probably do like a Bob Dylan video this month. I've been listening to like Silverstein and Census Fail, and I've been thinking about maybe doing like an acoustic cover of one of their songs, so maybe I'll do that. We'll see if I get around to it. Of course, I plan to continue making Stormlight Archive chapter recaps. I have committed myself to doing the entire series, and I'm not going to give up, even though it is taking me forever. I'm also going to continue making shorts based on the short stories that I read. I like doing that. I like reading short stories, as you guys know, and that's it. So thank you for watching, and keep reading.